Welcome to Voices of MCU, where we delve into the depths of wisdom and spirituality. Get ready as we embark on a journey of fostering faith and cultivating leaders. And now it's time for Leadership Unleashed with Dr. John Ughulu, where purpose, faith, and leadership meet.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are living in a world filled with conflict, whether in our personal lives, our workplaces, or even in our nations. Conflicts can be challenging, it can be draining, and sometimes they can make us question our leadership. But conflict doesn't have to be something we fear. In fact, conflict can be a powerful opportunity for growth, understanding, and transformation if we handle it wisely. Today, we will explore the strategies for conflict resolution through timeless wisdom found in the Bible, lessons from great leaders of history, and powerful examples from nature. We will look at how biblical characters handled disputes, how animals like the eagle and the lion and fruit trees can teach us valuable lessons, and how a legendary leader like Nelson Mandela used conflict as a stepping stone to create peace. This message is for all of you, whether you are leaders in business, communities, families, or organizations. I invite you to think deeply about your role in conflict resolution. Together, let's explore how we can turn conflict into an opportunity for growth and unity. Number one, understanding conflict. It is a natural part of life. And before diving into the strategies, let's first ask, what is conflict? Conflict at its core is a difference in opinions, goals, or values. It is the clash that happens when two or more forces meet. But let's not forget that conflict doesn't always have to be destructive. In fact, conflict can sometimes bring about necessary change, it can reveal hidden issues, and also strengthen relationships when resolved properly. In James chapter 4, verse 1, the Bible asks, what causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? This verse reminds us that many conflicts arise from inner desires and unmet expectations. But what happens when we face conflict? Do we shy away from it? Do we avoid it? Or do we confront it head on with wisdom? As leaders, our approach to conflict can either unite or divide. How we handle conflict reflects our character and our ability to lead with wisdom. Number two, the power of listening. We will be looking at Solomon's wisdom. One of the first strategies for conflict resolution is listening. And who better to illustrate the importance of listening than the King Solomon himself? In 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 16 to 28, we find the famous story of Solomon resolving a dispute between two women who both claimed to be the mother of the same child. In this story, Solomon listens carefully to both women, and rather than jumping to conclusions or making an impulsive decision, he proposes to cut the baby in half and give each woman a part. And of course, the real mother immediately offers to give up her claim to the child in order to save its life. And through this action, Solomon was able to discern the truth and make a just decision. The wisdom here is very clear. Listening, like we already know, leads to understanding, and understanding leads to a fair resolution. As leaders, we must be patient and listen attentively to all sides before making a decision. Are you truly listening to those involved in the conflict, or are you rushing to judgment? Number three, we need to look at the role of forgiveness. And that was the case of Joseph and his brothers. Another powerful conflict resolution strategy is forgiveness. The story of Joseph in the book of Genesis teaches us a profound lesson about forgiveness and reconciliation. Joseph's brothers betrayed him by selling him into slavery. But years later, when Joseph became a ruler in Egypt and his brothers came seeking food during a famine, he had the opportunity to exact revenge. Instead, in Genesis chapter 45, verse 4 to 5, Joseph says to them, I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. Joseph's response is a lesson in true leadership. Instead of seeking revenge, he forgave his brothers and chose reconciliation. He saw beyond their wrongdoing and understood that it was part of the larger plan. Forgiveness doesn't just release others, it also frees us. Leaders, think about this. Is there anyone in your life whom you need to forgive? Holding on to grudges only weighs us down, because true leadership involves letting go of past hurts and seeking healing for both ourselves and others. So when we forgive, we break the chains of conflict and open the door to peace and restoration. And we will be looking at number 4, the wisdom of the eagle. We will be looking at its perspective and clarity. Now let's turn to the eagle. I love to use the eagle for my illustrations because it is a magnificent creature that embodies perspective and clarity. Eagles are known for their ability to soar to great heights and see things from a far distance. They have the incredible vision, able to spot a small prey from miles away. The question now is, what can we learn from this? When we are caught in the midst of conflict, it's easy to become so focused on the immediate issue that we lose sight of the bigger picture. Like the eagle, we must learn to rise above the conflict and gain perspective. When we see things from a higher vantage point, we're able to understand the motivations of all parties involved and also identify solutions that others may miss. In Isaiah chapter 40, verse 31, we are reminded, but those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. This verse reminds us that when we are grounded in wisdom and hope, we can rise above the storms and navigate through conflict with clarity and grace. So, as leaders, I want you to ask yourself this question: how can I rise above the conflict I'm facing and gain a clearer perspective? When we approach conflict from a place of calm and clarity, we are better equipped to resolve it in a way that benefits everyone. And number five, we will be looking at the strength of the fruit tree, the patience and rootedness. Let's now look at the fruit tree, which, in my opinion, is a symbol of strength, patience, and growth. Just as a fruit tree grows through seasons of both growth, pruning, and harvesting, leaders also go through seasons of conflict and resolution. Psalm chapter 1, verse 3 says, that person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever they do prospers. A tree doesn't bear fruit overnight. It requires patience, deep roots, and time to grow. So, in the same way, conflict resolution often requires time. It may not be resolved in one conversation or in a few days, but if we remain patient, if we stay grounded in our values, and if we continue to nurture relationships, we will eventually see the fruits of peace and unity. So, leaders, I want you to ask yourself this question: am I allowing enough time for resolution, or am I rushing to a quick fix? True resolution takes time. Like the fruit tree, we must remain steady and patient, trusting that the process will lead to growth and eventual peace. And number six, let's look at Nelson Mandela, a leader who mastered conflict resolution. So now let's turn to a leader who embodied principles of conflict resolution in the most profound way. And that person is Nelson Mandela. Mandela's life was marked by conflict. He spent 27 years in prison fighting against apartheid, a system of racial injustice that deeply divided South Africa. And yet, when Mandela was released from prison after 27 whole years, he did not seek revenge. Instead, he sought reconciliation. He understood that for his nation to heal, forgiveness and unity were essential. Mandela famously said, resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies. His decision to forgive his captors, work with his former enemies, and to build a united South Africa remains one of the greatest examples of conflict resolution in modern history. Mandela's leadership teaches us that conflict, no matter how deep, can be overcome with forgiveness, with understanding, and with a vision for peace. So, my question to you now is, when faced with conflict, will you choose revenge or will you choose healing? I want you to think about those questions. And I would like to share some practical strategies for conflict resolution. Because as we bring this discussion to a close, I want us to summarize some practical strategies that can help you as a leader, that can help me, that can help those you know in resolving conflict. Number one is listen actively. Don't just hear words, listen to the emotions and underlying issues. Number two, seek to understand, not to be understood. Why? Because conflict often arises from misunderstandings. So we must strive to understand the perspectives of others before defending your own. Number three, offer forgiveness. It means you have to let go of resentment and offer grace to those involved in the conflict. Number four, we must gain perspective. Just like the eagle, we must rise above the situation to gain a clearer view. And number five, be patient. Just as a fruit tree takes time to bear fruit, conflict resolution takes time and nurturing. And lastly, be a peacemaker. Strive for reconciliation, not just a quick resolution. A true leader builds bridges, not walls. So, in conclusion, conflict is inevitable, but how we handle it determines our growth as leaders. So, as we have seen from biblical stories, examples from nature, and the leadership of Nelson Mandela, conflict is not about winning or losing. It's about reconciliation, understanding, and unity. So I challenge you today as leaders to think about how you can apply these strategies in your own lives. How will you respond to the next conflict you face? Will you rise above it like an eagle, remain grounded like a tree, or offer forgiveness like Joseph? The choice is actually yours. Thank you for joining me today, and may you be empowered to lead with peace, wisdom, and strength in all the conflict you encounter.
If you would like to become a sponsor of Voices of MCU, please go to the description, find the link, and connect with us.